Hello everybody, this is Milad and I'm really happy to be with you with another video. So in this video, I want to talk about something really important, especially for those who want to start programming just from start. And it's not only for them, but also it's about everybody who does the development and programming, and everybody who is in touch with a programming language. Basically, in this video, I'm gonna answer this question that which language is best for us, which language we need to choose and we need to start learning. And we have these questions from time to time. It's not only a one answer for that. There is no one answer for that. And I think it depends on a lot of things. And time to time, we need to answer this question, and the answer can be different in different situations and occasions. I think we need to ask this question from ourselves every 5 years, because the trends are going to be really different from what we see now, and everything's gonna get changed during time. So this isn't a one-time question that I can't answer that actually directly to and say that this language is the best. It's not like that. But rather, what I'm gonna do in this video is that actually I want to give you some hints about the languages. I want to give you the big picture, and based on that, based on the basics and fundamentals, whenever you ask this question from yourself, and based on the trends that you see around yourself, you can actually pick the best language for yourself and for the job you're doing and for the task you have. So I think this way is much better than just saying that JavaScript is best, Python is the best, and like this. But the basics, the big picture is always pretty much the same. Well, from technology to technology, framework to framework, it can be different, but mostly it's gonna be the same even for the next 10 years or 20 years. So let's start with this, that basically what we have in programming, in development. So basically, when you want to create software or an app or an application or a program, and basically when you want to do the coding, the very first question you need to ask yourself that for which platform or which devices I want to develop this program, because the answer can change the language you want to work with. These days we have all sorts of languages, a lot of languages that are called cross-platform. It means that you can start coding in one platform and then you can get the output for different devices, for different platforms. And it's really amazing. But there are some languages that are basically for one platform and one device. It's uniquely designed for them because the performance there is much better, and it's not really easy. The architecture they have basically is suitable for that kind of devices or platforms. So let's start with this. Well, basically we have three main platforms, let's say. The first platform is phones. We have iPhones, and we have Android, basically Android-based phones. We have basically these two big categories. There are some other OS for phones and some other devices, but well, the majority is iPhones and Android devices. So now we have another platform. This is the first category. The second category is basically web pages, web browsers. the concept is completely different. With web browsers, you can have access to a website with your phone, with your tablet, with your computer. So it's not about the device, it's about the platform, it's about the environment we're using to actually access the application. So basically a website is a web application. It can be really simple, it can be really complicated, even complicated than a mobile application or a computer application. So this is the second category, basically web applications, that we need to access to the web applications through browsers, Chrome browser, Firefox, and all sorts of other browsers for Mac OS, for Windows. Now the third category, or basically the third platform, is desktop applications, and it can be divided into three big categories itself. The first one is Windows OS, second one is Mac OS, and third one is Linux based, basically OS and applications. So we have this big picture. So depending on which device and basically platform you want to go with, and you want to start developing your application, the choice you have for the language is different. And even if you use a cross-platform language to do that, you need to start with one of these platforms. You need to pick that I want to first start developing the web application, and then I'm gonna work on the other applications for other devices. But the source code is pretty much the same, just you need to change it a little bit to create the output for others as well. But you have to pick, and you have to go with one of these platforms and applications. Okay, so now this is the big picture. Now let's talk about every one of these categories as much as I can. I'm not gonna go into the details. There are a lot of details there. It can be really complicated, but I just want to give the big picture. So I'm not gonna compare the programming languages together. I'm not going to talk about their architectures or speeds or the performance in different devices. I just want to tell you what can you do with these languages, for which platform we can use which basically languages. And I'm not going to talk about all the languages in the world. We have around, I'm not quite sure, but maybe 700 to 1,000 programming languages. It's amazing. But rather I want to talk about mostly about the top 10 languages we have. So also we have another platform, basically. It's not exactly a platform, but it's basically you want to, if you're a researcher, if you want to develop something, if you want to write a program for calculating something, you want to implement an algorithm. So let's start with this particular topic. This is not exactly a platform, but it's basically a functionality of programming. So in this case, I want to suggest two programming languages, or maybe three. So if a researcher, if you are a PhD student, in these cases, probably you just want to have a language that is easy to work with, and also it's fast enough. So most of the students and researchers start working with MATLAB. It's really popular in the universities, but it's, well, if you want to have it for yourself, it's a little bit expensive. And also we have Python for this job, which is free, and there is all sorts of tools for this kind of data analysis and data science and machine learning things. and you can pretty much build any algorithm you want from scratch with Python. So basically Python and MATLAB are the most famous languages in this world if you're a researcher. There are a couple of other languages I'm not going to talk about, but basically you can use any languages to do that. You can use C++. It's very famous for computer science things. If you want to do for deep learning things, a lot of people go with C++ because it's much faster. But well, MATLAB and Python, especially CPython, can be worked with C++, can be work behind the scene, they work with C. So the performance depends on the algorithm you implement and how you implement it. But basically these 2 or 3 languages are really good for doing this kind of works if you want to do these computational things. Now let's get back to the platforms we have. So let's start with web pages and websites and web applications. Basically all of them are same thing. So let's go back in time a little bit to 20 years ago. Well, basically during that time, I'm not even sure we had web pages that time, but roughly I think we started using web as what we have like 20 years ago. Well, they started with really simple static pages. So it was all about HTML, and then after that CSS got added to that. What is an HTML? Every web page you see, every website and web application you see, when you go to your Amazon.com, when you go to Netflix, when you go to all of these websites with your browser, with your phone, with your laptop, with your tablet, doesn't matter. As soon as you go with your browser, all of these websites are based on HTML. So the headline, the text, the pictures, and everything you see are here because of HTML. And when you want to start developing a website, basically, the very first thing, when you want to put the data there, when you want to put content, the very first thing you put there is HTML. And basically HTML is a coding language. It's not some people say that it's not a programming language, and it's true. It's not a programming language, but rather it's a coding language. It means that you have a limited option to do programming. So it's basically for creating a structure. You want to say that I want to have this title here, I want to have this text here, I want to have image. So just put the data you want on top of each other, and you create a page. Now it's time to make it look beautiful, make it look, with colors and with, style, and make it beautiful, make it interactive. So you can these sort of things with CSS. CSS is for styling. And again, CSS is not a programming language. It's basically a coding language. It's a markup language that you can basically put some configurations and add it to your project. So you can say that I want to have this font for this title. I want to have this color for this image, or for this section. I want to have this size for this image. These are just some configurations. There is no for loop in HTML or CSS. There is no basically if condition in these languages. Well, in the new modern versions, you can have access to some of these functionalities, but it's not meant to, use it as a programming language. The purpose is only for web pages and some other applications for other devices, but mostly it's for creating web pages. So if you want to start web development and developing web applications, the very first thing you need to know, other than the programming language, is HTML and CSS. Then after that, after a couple of years, they started to adding JavaScript to it to make it more interactive. The web pages got more interactive, got better, much better. So JavaScript was basically for browsers, for websites. And compiling HTML, CSS, and JavaScript was through the browsers. The browsers were responsible to actually, and are responsible to actually compile those codes and turn it into a web page, a beautiful web page. Now it brings us to another topic, which is basically being a front-end developer or a back-end developer. So let's talk about this topic here. Back in those days, in the early days of developing web pages, so basically for a static website we need only one browser to actually compile the code, and the data is static. The data is already there. So basically it's front-end. We have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and we have some files, and basically the browser is responsible to compile the data for us and to show it to us. But after that, PHP got added to the basically package, and with PHP you were able to fetch new data. You can add some functionality to get data from the server, from elsewhere. It wasn't static. The data wasn't static anymore. So with PHP, you can write some PHP code inside HTML, and then you can get, for instance, you can upload some new posts. You can get new posts. You can show it directly in the website. But for PHP, we needed some servers to be able to compile the code. So that was the reason they started using PHP and servers. So it was the backend side, because everything was happening on the server and it wasn't visible from the user's perspective. It wasn't accessible through the browser. Browser didn't know about this, and browsers don't have access to the backend side, to the languages that are on the servers. So PHP works on the server, gets some data from the database, and pass it to the front end with HTML and CSS and JavaScript. And then browser is responsible to basically render everything together and show the page to you. So this is the front end and the back end. I'm not trying to, actually teach you what is front end or back end. I'm just give you some hints, give you some keywords, and creating the big picture for you to understand the whole thing. And then if you're interested in one part, you can go deeper and search for it. So, and after that, so we have PHP and we have backend and frontend. But in those days, actually, there was basically one thing. But then after each part got bigger and bigger and bigger, we started to see, web developer as those two things, basically front-end developer and back-end developer. And now these days we have something called full stack developer, which means back-end developer and front-end developer, and also application developer for phones and iPhones. Okay, now let me take a look at my notes. So we talked about web pages, and now for the backend side, we can use all sorts of languages. We can use Python. We can use, these days we can use basically JavaScript. We started using JavaScript for the front end, but these days we can use JavaScript for the backend as well, under the hood of Node.js. Basically, Node.js is the same JS, which can be run on the servers. So you can use both JavaScript for front-end and back-end. And then we started using some frameworks for both front-end and back-end. And frameworks are basically some libraries based on the actual programming language that they have already some components and tools that it makes it easier for you to start developing. That's all about frameworks. So we started using Python, JavaScript, Java, and PHP. We already started using PHP, but in more advanced frameworks, we started using that. And now for each language, we have all sorts of frameworks to use it. For Python, we have Django. For basically Node.js or JS, we have Express.js. And for PHP, for instance, we have Laravel, or you can use some CMS. CMS means that it's basically ready to use websites. But I'm not going to talk about those. So this is about the backend, and for the front-end side, we started using some frameworks as well based on JavaScript. HTML and CSS are still there, but we're doing the front-end development easier than before, and it's more advanced. We can do better things and greater things with that. So frameworks like React.js, basically based on JavaScript and Node.js, but actually you can do pretty much the same thing in easier ways. We have Angular and we have Vue.js. We have all sorts of frameworks for the front end. We have, for instance, Bootstrap. Bootstrap is like some ready to use CSS styles. It's nothing more than that. We have Tailwind CSS. It's basically again CSS. So this is front end and back end. Now let's go to the third category, which was actually for desktop applications. For desktop applications, basically with pretty much with all these languages, you can start working with that. You can use Python, you can use C++, you can use C#, you can use even with cross-platform languages like, for instance, React, you can start developing for all these devices and applications. For phones and smartphones and iPhones, we have basically Android and iOS. So for Android, you can start using Android Studio, or you can use React, basically React Native, to develop applications for all of these devices, for iPhone, for Android phones, and all other devices, all sorts of other devices. Okay, I think that was pretty much what I wanted to tell you. It was the big picture of how everything works, and for each of these devices and platforms, I can talk over. I can talk about all sorts of languages, but actually I don't want to make it really complicated. It's already big enough. So now you have a basic category in your mind. You can understand what we have and what we don't have here. So you can put everything together and go for it and learn new things about each category. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want to know more about these kind of things, and I can go deeper and talk in more details for each specific platform. See you, bye.